Hello and welcome to the Collapse Experiment. Today is the video that some people have been asking for. I've talked in the past about meeting my biological dad for the first time. And this happened. It was after my oldest daughter was born, who was a micro preemie. If you want that story, I do have a book on Amazon called Hobbit Baby. You can check out. Details what happened during those 91 days after she was born. To get back to my dad. So, my mom dated this guy in high school, and she got pregnant senior year. She had me, obviously, and when she told him that she was pregnant, at first he said he was going to do the right thing, and then I don't know the timeline. Afterwards, he had changed his mind. So, I don't know the details. I don't know what he was thinking. But either way, it was two young people fooling around who shouldn't have been. And both of them just made really awkward choices afterwards. At different times and many different things. So, I was born and I was told from my dad's side of the family that even though I was the first grandchild for both the Gilmans and the Gokis, my mom's side of the family refused to let any of them come to actually see me. And they weren't allowed to see me after that. And I didn't know that any of them even existed until 3rd grade. That was when I was sat down at the kitchen table and she told me, "You know how you think so-and-so is your dad?" Yeah. Needless to say, that was a very awkward conversation. It wasn't, in my opinion, remembering how it went down, it wasn't handled properly. I'll put it that way. It was treated as we're going to talk about this once. I'm going to tell you can ask me stuff later, but don't ask me stuff later. It's kind of how it went down. So, the other things I was told that I've talked about previously was, it wasn't just me. He got 5 other girls pregnant. There's all these kids running around. And he's just a bad dad. All of this was fictitious, by the way. She says that she was told by some caseworker that was what happened, but I also know from memories I have growing up that there were issues about child support. And I have one memory where I was playing outside in front of the house. I was young. I was really little. This was in the 80s. And this car pulls up. This guy gets out. And he looks at me and says, are you Matt? Yeah. And he comes towards me and he says, hi, I'm pretty sure he said, hi, I'm your dad. And I freaked out, not knowing who this person was. And my mom came down the stairs from the apartment and told me to get upstairs and get away from him. And I remember hearing, what? I can't see him? And she says, no, you haven't paid your child support. And then I remember him saying, he doesn't even know about me. And I went into the house and I don't know what was said after that. But I have this, it's a very, very vivid memory. I remember her telling me afterwards, you don't talk to strangers. Like, this was one of those, you're going to become a milk carton kid type thing. So, I don't recall ever seeing him after that. I remember he was with another woman too, and I'm wondering if that was who he ended up marrying and having my half-sister with. But later on, it would come up. Like, people would suggest, like, why don't you go look for him? Why don't you find him? I remember working at the hospital. And it was early on. It was the early 2000s. Because I was working on the 4th floor. I was working on the cancer unit. My mom worked on the other side of the building on the 4th floor in the cardiology unit. And she came over one day and said, I just thought you should know that your grandpa on your dad's side is over on my unit, which is a huge HIPAA violation. But what I learned was a day or two later, he died. He was there for a heart attack, and he ended up dying from it. She made a comment about how I need to stay healthy because they have a lot of heart issues in that family. And I'm thinking, like, how much do you know about this family that you've just never bothered to tell me? Because, half of my genetics are from this family. And yet, I'm learning all of this shit as they die off. Like, so I never met my grandpa on my dad's side. Later, I had my divorce, and then I dated this girl for 3 years. And after that, I was like, I came to a point where I needed to get my shit together. And I started seeing this therapist. And he made a lot of suggestions to me and things that I just brushed off at the moment. But one of the things he said was, have you thought about moving out of town? And that was after I told him about my family, my mom and my stepdad. And he was like, you really should get in contact with your mom. And I'm like, yeah, we need to have a talk about that before you start making suggestions. And in the end, he was like, have you considered moving? And then the other thing he said was, you should look up your dad. And even if he turns out to be someone you don't want in your life, at least you meet him. And it could go either way. It could be you end up spending a bunch of time together and he becomes part of your life, or you meet him the one time and you go about your separate ways. But so at one point, and I think it was after Zoe was born, and I started doing some research on online, and I found the obituary for my grandpa that had died, and it had the list of the people he's survived by. So I started looking those names up on Facebook. I found my half sister, who I never got to meet. She moved to Florida 3 days after I contacted her to go to school, and then lost contact with her after that because of the 2016 election. Yeah, because I had stated on Facebook that, you know, both candidates were shit, and neither one were qualified, and she was a huge Hillary fan because she's a woman. And I said, that's not a qualification, and she's quit every job that she's had previously without filling her term. And yeah, so that was like one of the last times I had actually had a chat with her online. Never talked to her on the phone, never had her address to send her a letter or anything. She also told me that it wasn't worth looking him up because of what had happened to her during the divorce. He made an accusation that maybe his daughter wasn't his, and which even his family gave him crap about. But after the divorce, he never came around, from my understanding, to visit her. Like, he just kind of wrote everyone off. And it's not like she did anything wrong. You know, she's the other kid that he had, and like I had said before, he's not the cuddly father type. So I end up coming in contact with my uncle, his brother, and there's this long story of how the family became divided back in the 80s. It sounded like a very Gilman thing, except the Gilmans don't start and operate companies, family-owned businesses. And so there was this schism in the family, and his brother Denny was on the other side, and those people seem to be very cool. Like, they all hang out, they get together every weekend, they're really tight, they're fun to be with. Which also means it's very awkward for me because I didn't grow up in that environment. And when I'm in those situations, because of how things went in the past, I'm always sitting there just waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? It's very hard for me to have a good time in situations like that. And then, yeah, eventually I got his address. I took a copy of my book and wrote a note to him on the inside and left it in his front door, which later I found out he never uses. Of course. Because I dropped it off. I couldn't get a phone number for him, but I had his address, and I drove all the way out there. He lived outside of Kalamazoo, and I want to say it was like maybe a week or two later, he called me, and we ended up meeting at a brewery downtown Kalamazoo for the first time. We had lunch, and we sat at a table for seems like it was an hour or two, and I got to ask him questions, and I kind of told him my side of the story and what I remembered. And he defended my mom quite a bit. And because I was asking about different things. I was telling him about how, like, growing up I wasn't allowed, not allowed, like, it was to never happen, where Led Zeppelin, I could not listen to Led Zeppelin. And one of the first things I did after I moved out of my parents' house was I went on Napster and I downloaded and I burned all 10 Led Zeppelin albums. And I started from the first one and listened to them all the way through. Because I had to know, like, what was so bad about this music? Well, it was my dad's favorite band at the time when they were dating. 1979. Of course. Because the first 9 albums had been released during the 70s. They were a huge band. So that was on my agenda. And then when I told him that, he just kind of looked baffled, and he's like, man, I haven't listened to them in like 30 years. And he's really into motorcycles. And I was told by some of my cousins that he has quite the gun collection, so we talked about that for a little bit. Like, I'm not a gun enthusiast. Like, it's been years since I bought a gun. I have what I have, and I have what I need. And that's all that I have. No, I'm not constantly out, well, I think I need a new one. So, yeah, he told me some personal stuff about him, like some of the women that he dated, and what happened with his marriage, and he didn't really want to talk about, like, what happened with his family, though. Like, when I brought up his brother and how I found him, that was really uncomfortable for him. Like, there's a lot of animosity in that family from something that happened 40 years ago. 40 years. So, for some reason, there's like no patching that. I saw it from both sides, and yeah. So he did get to see his granddaughter. I did meet my grandma. So I met her, I want to say I met her twice. I had one Christmas with her. And of course they got some stuff for Zoe. Because, you know, the great granddaughter. And she died like right after that. But she was happy that that was the first time. She never saw me as a baby. Like, that was the first time. And there were the questions of, like, who is this guy? Is it really him? Is he just trying to get money out of, like, there's all that bullshit. And I was just like, you know, that never came up. But I have a feeling it was a conversation that they were having. Because it was funny because, you know, there were some people I met for the first time, and they looked at me and they could see my dad in me, and they were like, oh my God, it's him. But yeah, there was about a year where, I would go to visit certain members of the family. There's some that are like super super religious, and it's like there's one day I mentioned, yeah, I like to smoke a pipe sometimes, and they were like, what? And I don't know what religion it is. We're like, smoking pipe tobacco is a fucking mortal sin, or having a beer once in a while. Good Lord. Never got invited back to that house afterwards. Can't imagine they have company that often. But no, my uncle, he was really cool. He was known for doing quite a few things. He completely rebuilt a Model A that he had in his garage, one of the old Ford trucks. And then at one point he had built a carousel. He found an old carousel and he refurbished it. And he even like tracked down horses from old carousels to replace the ones that were missing. And he got the motor running. And so yeah, this guy, he could do quite a bit. He was actually really fun and cool to talk to. And yeah, the last time I heard from my dad was like a year after we moved up here. And he sounded disappointed, but it had also been like 2 years since the last time I heard from him. And he's really hard to get a hold of. There was a couple of times I tried calling him and no answer, no call back. He doesn't usually have the most up-to-date phone. He's not on the internet. So I kind of knew that once we moved, that was it. That was, the last time I saw him. He stopped by. He stopped by the house one summer, and he had shaved his beard, and he was dressing nicer than he usually does, and he was talking about how he was gonna be a father and wanted to spend more time with me and stuff. And after that, he left, and yeah, it was like 2 years until I heard from him again. So the agenda must have changed. I don't know. Come on. Dog's about to run in the road. So that's it. That's pretty much how things went down. Meeting my dad. And it was a good experience. And one of those things I'm glad that I did. It answered a lot of questions, left with more questions, and who knows, some will be answered over time and others just won't. Until next time, keep on typing.